Hang Gliding Flight School is a free educational resource created to share the fun and adventure of flying by encouraging, teaching, and inspiring aviators of all ages. Aviation videos provide a supplement, never a replacement, for face-to-face, in-person training with qualified teachers. Visit www.hangglidingflightschool.com for a map of nearly 40 flight instructors in the USA.
Good day, aviators, and welcome to another episode of Hang Gliding Flight School. My name is Eric, and this episode of Hang Gliding Flight School is going to discuss the safest colors for a hang glider. Now, in order to remain visible in the air and avoid collisions, you need to make sure your aircraft stands out and is easy to identify. Obviously, the safest colors are going to provide the greatest contrast. But how can you make sure your airfoil is visible against any background? So, those of you who know a little about art and color theory may presume that we'd want to use a traditional color wheel to find opposite colors and contrast. So, let's assume that the sky is usually blue and the ground is usually green. Well, depending upon the color wheel you're using, the opposite of blue is yellow or orange, and the opposite of green is purple or red. So, we'd want a yellow sail on the bottom to stand out against a blue sky, and a red sail on top to stand out against the green ground. Now, that's a very wise and sensible approach, and I commend you for drawing that conclusion. But there may be an even more effective way to understand color contrast. To refine our approach, we have to go back to the Middle Ages. Rules for the best contrasting color combinations were established centuries ago from medieval coats of arms. When you were preparing to fire an arrow at someone 600 feet away, you had to make sure the person holding that shield was your enemy and not your ally. The whole point of flags and coats of arms painted upon shields was to quickly identify friend from foe at a distance on the battlefield. The artistry of drawing and establishing these color guidelines was known as heraldry.
The basics of heraldry work like this. On shield devices, all heraldic designs used a number of primary colors known as tinctures. These tinctures were divided into two main groups called metals and colors. There are 2 metals and 5 colors. The metals are gold or yellow, known as or in heraldic terms, silver or white, which is known as argent in heraldic terms, and then we have the colors. Red, which is gules, black, which is sable, blue, which is azure, green, which is vert, and purple, which is purpure. Now, one of the most basic and important rules regarding tinctures in heraldic design is to never overlap colors on colors or metals on metals. You can only place the metal of white or yellow on color backgrounds, or colors on metal backgrounds. But you can't put a metal atop a metal or a color atop a color because the human eye has a difficult time seeing the contrast between these color combinations from a distance. So again, if you look at heraldic shields from the Middle Ages, 99% of them rigidly follow these color rules.
Now you may be thinking, well, who cares? Medieval heraldry doesn't apply to the modern world. We must have some better techniques than things they used back in the year 1242. Well, medieval heraldry is not outdated at all. In fact, you may be shocked to discover that you obey the rules of medieval heraldry every time you leave the house. Do you know where you obey those rules? Modern road signs. Modern road signs follow the rules of medieval heraldic color combinations. Colors on metals, metals on colors. Highway signs are vert with silver lettering. Stop signs are gules with silver lettering. So, no, Medieval heraldry is not a useless or outdated concept. In fact, you unknowingly use medieval heraldry color rules every single day for the same reason. So you can accurately identify information from a distance. Now that you understand these fundamental color theory principles, we can come back to hang gliders. And of course, well, we immediately notice a huge problem, which is the background, right? Medieval shields and modern road signs have a set background color. But the background behind our aircraft is always changing, depending upon the weather, the terrain, and the angle from which the observer is seeing us. We may have blue skies behind us or overcast gray skies. We may be flying over or in front of a tan or brown desert mountain or a lush green mountain. We may be backlit by a sunset or bright clouds. So because our backgrounds are constantly in flux, how can we come up with an effective high contrast color combination for all those changing conditions? Well, unfortunately we can't. It's really not possible. The best we can do is come up with color combinations which should remain effective under the widest range of conditions. So, the best place to start is to look at your local flying sites. Where do you fly most frequently? Does the weather force you to only fly during certain seasons of the year? And what colors do you commonly have in the sky and on the ground during your flying season? Now, this glider is my EZ2, built by North Wing in Washington State. And I picked the color combinations on this aircraft for very specific reasons.
I decided on the main sail being bright yellow. Most pilots seem to regard yellow or white as the most visible colors against terrain. And looking back at medieval heraldry, this makes sense, since those are the two metals and they are used against every background color. I went with black on the underside of the leading edge to provide good contrast if I need to be seen from below, since the sky is usually blue or a bright overcast gray. A dark color will stand out well. Now, why did I decide on an orange leading edge? Well, I looked around online to find real opinions from pilots. What do other pilots think? What do they find to be the best color combination? And here are some quotes from pilots, and there appears to be a fairly consistent consensus that red or orange tend to be the most visible and noticeable colors for the leading edge of a hang glider, regardless of the background. Now, considering how often pilots have different views and opinions, it's interesting so many pilots agree that red or orange are the easiest colors to see on approaching aircraft. Finally, I also added some powerful strobe lights designed for quadcopters. They just stick on with Velcro tabs. Now, traditional airplanes have a red strobe on the port wing, a green strobe on the starboard wing, and a white strobe in the center of the aircraft. These strobes are Firehouse Technology Arc 5 lights and meet the FAA requirement of being visible up to 3 miles away. They are extraordinarily small and lightweight and can run for up to 4 hours on a single charge. Even in daylight, they are extremely bright in the distance and give your aircraft added visibility. So, now you understand why I decided on this color combination for my North Wing EZ2. The whole purpose was to create something with maximum visibility under the widest array of terrain, weather, and lighting conditions in order to make sure the presence of my aircraft is easily identified in flight by other pilots. And in closing, I should mention, some pilots claim colored sails wear out faster than white because the dyes degrade the fabric or the colors absorb more UV light, which deteriorates the sail. I would suggest reaching out to hang glider manufacturers or fabric makers for their opinions and expertise. Hang glider sails are made of Dacron, which is usually colored through a solution dyeing process where pigments are added directly to the liquid polymer before it is spun into fibers. This has a negligible effect on the strength of the fabric because the pigments become infused into the material during manufacturing and don't significantly disrupt the molecular structure. Modern dyes are also better at bonding with the polyester fibers, resulting in less color fading over time. Plus, most sailcloth Dacron now incorporates UV stabilizers during manufacturing. 21st century Dacron is not the same as Dacron from 70 years ago. Just something to keep in mind if anyone tries to scare you away from a colored sail.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Hang Gliding Flight School. I hope this has inspired you to come up with an appropriate color combination for your next hang glider, which will be the most visible and distinctive to keep you and other pilots safe. Be sure to check the Hang Gliding Flight School website to find a worldwide map of nearby instructors who will train you to become a hang glider pilot. And remember, my friends, in the words of Ray Bradbury, you've got to jump off cliffs all the time and build your wings on the way down.